Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the West End Imps show. As always, my name is Jake. We're here to review the dross between Lincoln City and Cambridge that took place yesterday afternoon. As always, joined by Mr. K. Chris, how are we, my friend?
Good morning, mate. Yes, very well. Thank you. Very well.
Good. Before we get started, before obviously we get to talk about the football, there are a few things that myself and Chris would like to speak about. The first of which being about, obviously, some of you may have seen the news on Twitter this week that Ben Knappman, a.k.a. Cod's Vlogs, the Fleetwood guy, has been in hospital. He's had a horrible time of it with his knee and stuff. So for myself, Chris, everybody else on the podcast, just would really like to wish Ben a really speedy recovery, because I know as someone who's really close with him, he's really struggling at this minute. So Ben, if you are watching this, I hope you feel better soon. And if we'd like to see him back at Highbury, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, rest easy, Ben, and hope you get well soon, mate.
But also, just like to give everyone a massive credit yesterday at the ground for the tribute to Marcus. I thought, obviously, that was put back from the Burton Albion game because of a frozen pitch, but a flawlessly followed minutes of applause with a banner. Big shout out as well to the Cambridge fans. They joined in as well, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was a really touching moment, and I think it just showed how important and popular Marcus was within the fan base and beyond. So yeah, just sending love to his friends and family.
Absolutely. And finally, then, just before we do get started as well, we are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers on this channel. If you would be able to drop a subscribe, that would be massively appreciated as well. Right, enough fanning about. We'll talk about Cambridge United at home.
We have to.
I mean, I don't think we're going to
just stop there, mate. Let's end on a good thing, you know.
I don't think we're going to be here too long. Right, lineups then. Went with a 4-back. Not surprising from when we were in the pub. You pretty much got it spot on, apart from the left back. Surprises to see. Any surprises in that 11?
Not massively. Not hugely. I think we're pretty thin, aren't we? You know, when you look at the bench, there was very little that could come on and affect the game, as was proven. I suppose it was just the call at left back for me. Struggling a little bit to understand the 4, not the 3 or the 5. The 3, the formation. I'm not sure. But yeah, no, I think it pretty much was as expected, given the injuries and the departures.
Yeah, I think what was perhaps strangest to me was Teddy Bishop playing in that deeper role, which we'll come on to later. But I didn't massively feel that it worked. We'll come on to. Massive positive, obviously, was the return of Lewis Monsma, who was on the bench for the first time in well over a year, following his ACL injury that he picked up last year. So really happy to see Lewis on the grass. I understand he didn't get minutes, but from our understanding, he has been getting minutes in sort of behind closed doors friendlies. So he's building up to that match fitness, and hopefully he could well be involved next week as we take the trip up to Accrington. Right, first half, not a lot happened from my recollection. I think Cambridge maybe had a couple of headers. Rushworth made a save. Am I missing anything? I don't think we really had a shot on target, did we?
No, it was dire. I mean, there's no other way. You can't sugarcoat it, can you, at all yesterday? Just really passive, going more direct, going over the top quickly from back to front. That works if you've got someone like a Tom Hopper who's going to either win the headers or win the free kicks. Unfortunately, Ben House, I don't think he won a header all afternoon. And that's no discredit to him, because he's a great footballer, but it just wasn't working, and it just kept not working. And I think for me, that was the biggest frustration. But I can't really think of anything to say apart from about the first half, other than it was just really, really poor. Both teams, by the way, both teams.
Yeah, we'll quickly move on to the second half then. Obviously, again, not a lot particularly happened. Cambridge, threatened a little bit. We threatened a little bit. Sorry, I'm trying to stall myself, trying to think about what to say. But in the end, I just think it was two really poor teams in awful form that couldn't really get going at all. And I think the changes that both managers made, I think Mark Bonham made changes to try and liven up his Cambridge team. Didn't particularly work. Didn't feel massively threatened. But again, the changes that Mark made, the likes of Max came on, didn't he? Didn't really make much of a difference. Harry Boyes was given an opportunity, and then Jovan was brought on at maybe a little bit too late. Maybe. What did you think about all the substitutions in the game?
Well, I just think all the subs were like for like, so there was no change to how we were playing, which is the thing that needed to change, in my opinion. I found it incredibly passive. We weren't pressing high or aggressively at all. I think for me, it's probably the first time I was watching thinking, what's the game plan? It felt to me like we had no game plan yesterday. The mindset was don't lose the game. For me, that's how I kind of perceived it to be throughout the 90 minutes was, don't lose. And I think if you're at home, your mindset's got to be, let's go and win the game. And I'm sure that, that's not what the players have been told. That's just how it felt to me. And Cambridge clearly came for a point and were celebrating that point like they'd won the game, which you can understand given their circumstances. But it was just a really, really disappointing performance, tactically really disappointing. Just nothing, absolutely nothing. I don't think either team would have scored if they'd have played throughout until now, and until next weekend, because there was no desire to actually change anything and go on the front foot and actually take the game by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah, there was no clinical. What did you think about Teddy Bishop then in that holding role? I've already explained that I didn't think it worked. Teddy's one of our more creative players that maybe would have been better off suited in the 10, but I can understand why Mandroy was put in the 10 because the performance away at Charlton, he really excelled, and I think Danny's best through the middle, so I can understand it. But Teddy, perhaps not, a little bit deeper, didn't really work, tried to do too much on the ball, forced the issue a little bit too much. I can remember one time in the first half where I think he went for a Megs when the ball on to Sean Rowan was pretty much just a square ball to beat the press, and we lost the ball and Cambridge had an opportunity. This is not me calling out Teddy Bishop. Teddy Bishop is a really good player. I just don't think that he is a holding midfielder or a box-to-box midfielder. I think he is, if you're going to box him into anything, I think he's that creative midfielder at the top of the midfield, not one of those that are anchoring. And you can tell we miss Matty Virtue because, mate, if we had Matty Virtue in the team yesterday, you'd be able to push Teddy up a little bit higher up and all would be good. But what did you make of Teddy's positioning yesterday?
I pretty much agree with everything you said, to be honest. I can understand the thinking behind it, but it didn't work. He never had the opportunity to kind of get on the ball and get his head up and actually begin to, theoretically, I guess he was put there to start spraying a few nice passes around and get us out from our half. But we were missing the midfield so often because we were just pumping it long. And, he's not a bad player. Of course he's not. He's probably one of our most kind of, the way he reads the game, he's probably one of our most creative players. And he is in that 8 or 10 role, for me, is where we should be playing, not in that kind of 4 or 6, if we're going back to old school shirt numbers. But yeah, I think, you could call out a few players, a massively frustrating afternoon for Jack Diamond. I found him to be really disappointing. I think his attitude really got under my skin a bit because every time something didn't work for him, he was just bawling out Sean Rowan as if it was Sean's fault all the time. And I just found it. I can't think of a positive to take other than what you've touched on, and what I tweeted after the game was Lewis Monson on the bench.
Yeah, I would agree. There has been the odd conspiracy theory sort of floating around on social media that we've sort of abandoned this playing on the floor style technique, that we've been developing ever since Mick Garrity's gone off to QPR, to join Neil Critchley. It seems like there might have been the idea might have gone out the window a little bit. What would you sort of say to those rumours circulating around that's the case? Because based on yesterday's evidence that we had in front of us, then those conspiracy theorists might well have a point.
I just don't think we've got the personnel at the minute to play that way. I think Virtue's a massive loss because he gives the solidity at the base of that midfield for us to try and begin to play it out nicely from the back. We don't have, even though we brought Chico in, I thought he didn't really get into the game, get involved much yesterday. We don't have a great deal of pace, I don't think. So yeah, I worry actually a little bit. We were talking about it before the game, I think, about the backroom staff coming in and going 6 months later. You can look at that two ways. You can think, well, that's fantastic because they're being headhunted from Lincoln City. What, we're doing some great things then? Or you can look at it the other way, that actually something's going on inside we're not privy to that's making people or causing people to leave. So, that's another conspiracy theory, isn't it? We'll never know because we're not at the training ground. We're not in the, changing rooms. But I just don't think we've got the players to play that way at the moment. And I feel that maybe Mark's not quite sure what the formation is with the current players that we've got.
Yeah, it's definitely one of two ways. Obviously, we'll look to throw it forward. Tuesday, the deadline for signings to be made. Obviously, in the week there was a massive hoo-ha with Charlie Kendler going out on loan to Bromley and Hops going out to Colchester, who ironically was involved in a winning side away from home yesterday as they beat Hartlepool 2-1. What do you think then? Obviously, I think we're a little bit short in certain areas. Mark come out after the game and said it's obvious where we're short in midfield and up front. A name that has been thrown around today that's come through Football League World and people like that is Luke Plans, who is on loan in the second division or the top division in Belgium, who was at Derby County but was bought by Crystal Palace. But then Mark went out and said that there was one of the two players that we're chasing we've been after for a year, and one player we've been after for a number of years. So, what do you take from all that? What are we expecting between now and Tuesday, and what do you think we need?
I think we need a minimum of 3 players in. I think we need. In an ideal world for me, I think we need another wide player. I think we need 100% a striker, but the problem with bringing a striker in is we all want a big name. We all want someone who's proven. But then what happens to Ben House, who's been fantastic? So if we get a striker in, I think it's going to be someone that's going to play either, he's going to shift the formation to 2 up top, or it's going to be someone that's going to play to a large extent back up to House, because you're not going to drop House. He's been one of our best players throughout the whole season. But for me, more importantly, and I think Gary touched upon it in the pod, was we need to have a midfielder. We've got to get that solidity in the midfield. Partly that's one of the reasons I've been calling for Monsma to potentially be tried in that role. I don't know what other people think of that, but I think he'd be really suited to it. But we've got to have someone that's going to give us a little bit of bite and grit and stability in the base of that midfield. What we get, it's impossible to say, isn't it? We might end up with none. We might end up with just 1 or 2. But I think probably, amongst most fans, we're thinking at least 3 players have got to come through the door. For me, a midfielder, wide player and a striker. But we will see, won't we? It's going to be absolute meltdown, I'd imagine, on the socials. If there's very little announced before 6-7 o'clock on Tuesday night.
Yeah, well, the club are very tight-lipped, and I think
yes, I don't have any issues with that at all. I don't have an issue with the club being tight-lipped. I think it's quite professional, but equally, I was very surprised. I'm sure I wasn't alone in being very surprised when on the same day Hopper and Kendall both go out that we didn't have someone to announce to soften that blow a little bit.
Yeah, I massively agree, and I think it's going to be a bit of a waiting game between now and the deadline come Tuesday evening. Definitely going to be interesting, so keep your eyes on socials. I'm sure the club have got something lined up, but if not, then I think we could well be in trouble. But that's that. But right, I think we've sort of sat and moaned for a little bit too long about Lincoln City, so we are going to leave it there. If you are off to Accrington, I will see you there next week. But not really, not a lot to look forward to, Chris, at the minute, is
It feels a little bit gloomy and pessimistic, doesn't it? Yeah, but you know, I don't know how much difference a few signings is going to make realistically, depending on what their signings are. So it's a huge week, I think, because Accrington for me, I felt yesterday was a hugely important must win. I think Accrington, given yesterday's result, now significantly, as I felt always, 4 points out of yesterday and next Saturday would be enough to steady us, and I'd feel quite comfortable. If we come away with 2 or worse from those 2 games, I'm starting to get a bit worried. But yeah, I think, and as well, what we haven't done, Jake, and I'm not even sure we can, is man of the match.
Yeah, I genuinely, the people I would give the man of the match to would be the 8,300 odd that had to endure that turgid game of football. And
I'll give it.
I think I'd give man of the match to Marcus Needham, actually.
Yes, I was going to say, yeah.
I think there was a really good picture of the Co-op stand on their feet for Marcus with the advertising and the birds, the Sterlings that you mentioned after the game. I think that was just Marcus dropping in. So for me, Marcus, you say you were in agreement with that?
100%. I was going to say, yeah, the 8,500 that stood for a minute and gave Marcus a really fitting and emotional send off in the 55th minute. I think that was a powerful moment. Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Right, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for sticking it to the end. We'll be back next week for the Accrington game. Obviously, I'm going to that, so Chris will be dictating the conversation next week, which I think he enjoyed for MK Dons. But thank you everybody for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and up the Imps.
Up the Imps.